After weeks and months of rising trade tensions, the American and Chinese presidents are meeting in Washington for important nuclear talks. The question on many people's minds now, 9 years after China was admitted to the World Trade Organization and officially welcomed to the world economy, has China's rise been good or bad for America?
Meet Steve Uden, husband, father of 2 daughters, and a trade statistic.
I felt like a baseball player that got traded from a team that he loved playing for and loved the fans. I loved my customers. My coworkers were like second family to me.
His job as a telecom projects manager went overseas to China when his factory moved there. Classified by the U.S. government as a casualty of foreign trade, qualifies him for a stipend and money for retraining. Unemployment benefits and Cobra health insurance help fill the gap.
We're keeping it level and steady and holding the line, and right now we're okay.
He's the face of the increasingly strained relations between the U.S. and China. One think tank estimates 2.4 million manufacturing jobs went to China between 2001 and 2008. And with China's explosive rise comes a nation that is now a key player in America's domestic and foreign policy. Take its currency. Anything made in China is cheaper than made in the USA. Why?
They arbitrarily control the value of their currency, and they do not allow it to float like most other currencies, in which supply and demand for the currency set the value of it.
That means $1 is always equal to about 6.83 yuan.
The manipulation of their currency gives them about a 40% advantage, and it puts our exporters at an enormous disadvantage.
The Treasury Secretary abruptly postponed releasing a report this week that could have listed China as a currency manipulator, opting for backroom diplomacy and a closed-door meeting in Beijing. This just before China's president, Hu Jintao, comes to Washington for nuclear talks.
That's good. We're not going to hang him out to dry while he's here, which would be politically disastrous.
And then there's this. Pressuring China is tricky. China is America's banker, the world's factory floor. It's building its military, buying more of the world's natural resources to fuel its growth, and it doesn't like Americans telling it what to do.
The Chinese showing a new assertiveness and aggressiveness that took many Americans by surprise. I think that it's partly because they're starting to listen to what we say about this being China's century, and they've started to internalize it, and they say, well, if this is our century, then we should determine what goes on.
At the same time, the U.S. needs China's influence with emerging nuclear threats in North Korea and Iran.
Thus far, the United States and China have clearly not been in one mind. The Chinese have emphasized over and over and over again, do it diplomatically, let's negotiate, and the Americans have gotten more and more impatient and have tried to move the world in the direction of difficult sanctions.
As the temperature rises, the American people wonder, is China an opportunity or a threat?
It's going to be both, and the question is, on balance, is it better or it's worse?
A question unanswered for Steve Uden. He's still out of work in Foxborough, Massachusetts. His job is now somewhere in China. His outlook, quintessential American.
I'm completely optimistic and believe in the marrow of my bones that I am going to find something that's good for me and my wife and children.
Publicly, the Chinese dismissed the Obama administration's calls to let its currency rise, and Chinese officials insist the U.S. is using Beijing as a scapegoat for its own economic troubles. Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao, in rare public comments, recently scolded the American president and called America's attitude, quote, protectionist. And he said the U.S. has too many of its own problems to interfere in how China chooses to do business. Privately, though, many are hoping for some resolution on the currency issue soon. For CNNMoney.com, I'm Christine Romans.